The vault wasn't supposed to exist. I learned that on my third day working archival rotation in Olympus Mons facility, when I pulled up maintenance records for sub-level 9 and found nothing. No construction logs, no atmospheric readings, no personnel assignments. Just a gap in the database where 40,000 square meters should have been. Every other sub-level had decades of documentation. Sub-level 9 was a hole in the data. I asked my supervisor about it during shift change. He looked at me for 5 seconds without blinking, then told me to focus on my assigned sectors. When I got back to my terminal, my access credentials had been updated. Sub-level 9 now showed as restricted. I hadn't even submitted a query. Someone had been watching my searches in real time. That should have been the end of it. Should have been. 3 weeks later, a cargo manifest crossed my desk during routine processing. Standard supply run from the surface, except for one line item that made my stomach drop. Medical quarantine equipment, destination sub-level 9, authorized by someone whose clearance level I'd never seen before. The kind of authorization that came from Earth, from the administratum's highest echelons. I checked the manifest timestamp. The delivery had happened 6 months ago. I started paying attention after that, not actively searching, just noticing. A power consumption spike that lasted 3 days with no explanation. Atmospheric processes cycling through decontamination protocols on a sub-level that officially didn't exist. Personnel transfers that move people to Olympus Mons with specializations in xenobiology and archaeological containment. None of them appeared on facility rosters. The crater appeared 4 months into my assignment. Not on Mars, on my career prospects. My supervisor called me into his office and told me I was being reassigned to surface logistics. Effective immediately. No explanation, no appeal process. When I returned to my HAB unit that evening, 2 administratum officials were waiting inside. They didn't threaten me, didn't need to. The woman did all the talking while her partner stood by the door, his augmetic eye tracking my every movement. She explained that I had demonstrated curiosity beyond my station, that certain installations required absolute informational quarantine, that I had 2 choices: sign a binding silence oath backed by neural compliance monitoring, or accept transfer to a penal mining colony where questions wouldn't matter anymore. I signed. The neural monitoring felt like ice water being poured directly into my brainstem. But here's what they didn't know. I'd already made a copy. Before my credentials were restricted, before the officials showed up, I'd pulled every accessible file related to sub-level 9 and buried it in a personal data core disguised as entertainment media. They could monitor my neural patterns all they wanted. They couldn't read data I wasn't actively thinking about. 6 months after my reassignment, a tech priest died. Freak accident during routine maintenance, or so the official report claimed. His body was discovered in a service tunnel adjacent to sub-level 9's primary access shaft. The cause of death was listed as catastrophic system failure in his respiratory augmetics. What the report didn't mention was the footage from his optical implants automatically uploaded to the facility's backup servers in the seconds before he died. I saw that footage, not officially, not through any legitimate channel, a data leak, brief and quickly contained, but I happened to be monitoring the right information stream at the right moment. 3 seconds of corrupted video showing a corridor that shouldn't exist, walls covered in symbols that hurt to look at even through compressed footage, and something moving in the shadows that had too many joints in its limbs. The tech priest's last transmitted words were in binary cant, but I ran them through translation algorithms. They're not artifacts. They're still alive. Then the footage cut out. After that, the facility changed. Subtle shifts that most people wouldn't notice. Additional security checkpoints appeared on sub-levels 6 through 8. Personnel with medical training were being recruited from Earth at triple standard compensation. The facility's crematorium, which typically processed maybe 1 body per month, started running continuously. Atmospheric scrubbers began filtering for biological contaminants that don't exist in Mars's natural environment. And the dreams started, not just mine. 12 other workers reported identical nightmares to medical staff over the course of a month. We were all on different shifts, different departments, no overlap in our daily routines, but we all dreamed the same thing. Darkness pressing in from all sides, whispers in a language that predated human speech, and the overwhelming certainty that something was watching us from beneath the facility. Something patient, something hungry. Medical classified it as shared psychological stress from isolation and overwork, prescribed standard anti-anxiety medication and mandatory counselling sessions. 3 of those 12 workers requested immediate transfer off Mars. Their requests were denied. 2 weeks later, one of them walked into an airlock without a suit. I pulled his personnel file before they scrubbed it. He'd worked surface logistics like me, no access to classified areas, no reason to know anything about Sub-Level 9. But his final psychological evaluation, submitted 3 days before his death, contained a single phrase that the attending physician had highlighted for review. "The vault is breathing." That's when I started putting the pieces together. The fragments I'd saved, the incidents I'd witnessed, the patterns emerging from what should have been unconnected events. Mars wasn't just a colony world or a research outpost. It was a prison. And Sub-Level 9 wasn't a vault for storing artifacts from humanity's past. It was a cage for something humanity had found in the deep places of this dead world. Something that predated our arrival by epochs we couldn't measure. Something that the administratum would sacrifice entire facilities to keep contained. I'm writing this from a maintenance closet on Sub-Level 7, the deepest I can access with my current credentials. The walls here vibrate with a frequency just below human hearing. If I press my hand against the metal, I can feel it, a rhythm that almost resembles a heartbeat. Below me, 2 levels down, is the thing they don't want anyone to know about. And I've finally figured out how to get inside. I'm accessing the vault tonight, not through official channels or proper authorization, through maintenance conduits that exist in blueprints from before the facility's latest expansion, pathways the current security grid doesn't monitor, because according to updated schematics, they no longer exist. But they do. I've spent 3 months cross-referencing every architectural document I could access, every maintenance log, every power distribution map. The facility's infrastructure is layered like geological strata, each renovation burying the previous iteration without fully erasing it. Between Sub-Level 7 and Sub-Level 9 lies a gap, a space that shouldn't be there according to modern maps, but shows up clearly in the original construction plans from 40 years ago. The access point is behind a false panel in the East Corridor coolant junction. I discovered it 2 weeks ago while tracing a phantom power drain that kept appearing in my sector's consumption reports. The panel looks welded shut, but 3 of the bolts are decorative, placed there to discourage curiosity. The 4th bolt is real, but loose enough to turn by hand. Beyond it, a shaft descends into darkness that my headlamp barely penetrates. I've been preparing. Small things that won't trigger inventory alerts. An extra oxygen recycler cartridge taken from emergency stores during my scheduled safety equipment check. A portable data slate wiped clean of tracking protocols. A backup power cell that officially failed quality testing and should have been disposed of. Ration bars taken one at a time from the commissary over the course of a month. Everything I need to survive 12 hours in an unventilated maintenance shaft fits in a standard tool bag. The shift change happens at 2200 hours. That's when I'll have maximum time before anyone notices my absence. My supervisor thinks I'm running diagnostics on atmospheric processors in Sector 12, a job that legitimately takes 6 to 8 hours and requires radio silence because the electromagnetic interference disrupts communication equipment. By the time anyone realizes I never checked into Sector 12, I'll either be back or it won't matter. I've written down everything I know, encrypted it using a cipher I developed based on maintenance code sequences, and uploaded it to 3 separate dead drop servers scattered across Mars's communication network. If I don't return to delete those files within 24 hours, they'll automatically decrypt and distribute themselves to every media outlet in the solar system. The administratum can silence one maintenance worker. They can't silence the entire interplanetary news cycle. My hands are shaking as I write this final entry. Not from fear exactly, from the weight of what I'm about to do. Every instinct for self-preservation is screaming at me to walk away, to forget what I've learned, to accept the comfortable lies and live out my contract in ignorant peace. But I keep thinking about that worker who walked into the airlock, about the tech priest whose final words suggested the artifacts weren't artifacts at all, about the 12 of us who dreamed the same dream without ever speaking to each other. Something is down there, something that wants to be known. The panel comes off easier than I expected. The shaft beyond is exactly where the old blueprints indicated, a vertical tunnel lined with service rungs that descend into absolute darkness. My headlamp reveals the first 20 meters. Beyond that, nothing. I clip my safety harness to the maintenance rail and begin to climb down. The temperature drops immediately. Within 5 meters, I can see my breath. Within 10, the cold penetrates my thermal suit. The shaft wasn't designed for human occupation, just emergency access for repair drones that don't notice environmental extremes. My hands are already numb by the time I reach the first junction, 20 meters down. The shaft splits here, one branch continuing downward, the other extending horizontally toward what should be solid bedrock according to current maps. I follow the horizontal passage. The walls change here. The smooth manufactured metal of the upper facility gives way to rougher construction, older methods. I recognize the welding patterns from pre-Unity era engineering, techniques that haven't been used in standard construction for centuries. This section predates the official facility establishment by decades. Someone was here before Mars became an official colony world. The passage extends for 30 meters before terminating at a pressure door. Not the modern airlock designs used throughout the facility, but something older, heavier. The kind of door designed to contain catastrophic decompression or worse. The control panel beside it is dead, no power flowing to the access circuits. But there's a manual override, a physical wheel that should open the door if the internal pressure is equalized. I check my portable atmosphere analyzer. The passage beyond registers as breathable, slightly low oxygen, but within safe parameters. Temperature is colder than comfortable, but not lethal. I turn the wheel. It resists at first, decades of disuse making the mechanism stiff. Then it gives, rotating with a grinding sound that echoes down the passage behind me. The door opens onto darkness that my headlamp can't fully penetrate, but I can see enough. A chamber, vast and circular, carved directly from Mars's bedrock. The walls are covered in symbols that predate any human language I recognize. Some of them move when I'm not looking directly at them, shifting and reforming like living things. In the center of the chamber stands a structure, not a vault or container, but something organic. Curved ribs of what might be bone or crystallized mineral form a cage around empty space. Except the space isn't empty. There's something there, something my eyes refuse to properly focus on. It pulses with that same rhythm I felt through the walls on Sub-Level 7. The heartbeat that shouldn't exist in a dead facility on a dead world. And then I understand. This isn't a prison containing something dangerous. It's a seal, a barrier holding back something that exists partially outside normal space, something that's been pushing against reality itself for longer than human civilization has existed. The research facility above wasn't built to study Martian artifacts. It was built to monitor this seal, to ensure it never breaks. The whispers I've been hearing, the dreams, the incidents, they're not warnings, they're recruitment. The thing beyond the seal needs consciousness to interact with our reality. It needs human minds to serve as anchors, translators between its existence and ours. And I just walked directly into its influence sphere. The symbols on the walls are glowing now, responding to my presence. The glow intensifies, spreading from symbol to symbol like phosphorescence across deep ocean waters. My headlamp becomes unnecessary as the chamber fills with light that has no visible source. The pulse from the central structure accelerates, matching my elevated heart rate. Or perhaps I'm matching it. The distinction feels increasingly unclear. I should retreat. Every survival instinct I possess screams that assessment, but my legs won't respond to the command. Not paralyzed exactly, just disinterested in following instructions that contradict a deeper imperative I don't remember accepting. The whispers resolve into something approaching language. Not words, but meaning transmitted directly into comprehension. It shows me Mars as it was 3 billion years ago. Oceans reflecting pink skies, storms larger than continents, and beneath the surface, civilizations that never evolved from biology. They were born fully formed from mathematics, consciousness emerging from quantum probability fields that Earth wouldn't understand for eons. They discovered something in the spaces between dimensions, a method of existence that transcended matter and energy entirely. Most of them took that path, abandoning physical reality for states of being we have no framework to comprehend, but some stayed behind, guardians watching over the transition points where their realm touches ours. This seal isn't keeping something out. It's keeping something in, preventing premature contact with a form of existence humanity isn't ready to process. The facility above, the research, the incidents, all of it was humanity stumbling toward understanding, while the Guardians tried to slow our approach until we developed the necessary conceptual frameworks. But I've accelerated the timeline by coming here. My presence is creating resonance patterns the seal can't fully suppress. One of the symbols detaches from the wall. It hovers in the air before me, rotating through geometries that shouldn't fit in three-dimensional space. When I try to look away, I find that I'm seeing it from multiple angles simultaneously, as if my consciousness has expanded beyond the normal limitations of perspective. The entity beyond the seal isn't hostile. Hostility requires conflict of interest, and it has no interests that overlap with human concerns. It simply exists in a way that human neurology wasn't designed to process. Exposure causes breakdown, not through malicious intent, but through incompatibility, like running software on hardware that lacks the necessary architecture. The incidents above weren't attacks. They were side effects of proximity, mental frameworks fragmenting when they brushed against concepts they had no capacity to contain. The screaming researchers weren't being harmed. They were experiencing revelation their minds couldn't integrate, knowledge tearing through consciousness like radiation through tissue. I'm experiencing the same process now, but slower. My augmented nervous system provides some buffer, translating the incomprehensible into metaphor and symbol my baseline humanity can almost grasp. But it's inadequate. I can feel my sense of self fraying at the edges, personal history and identity becoming suggestions rather than certainties. The seal weakens further. Cracks appear in the bone-like structure at the chamber's center. Hairline fractures spreading through material that's held intact for geological ages. Each crack releases pressure, and with it, more information floods into my awareness. I see Earth as the entity perceives it. Not a planet, but a probability nexus. Billions of quantum decision points collapsing into consensus reality every instant. Human consciousness isn't observing this process. We're generating it. Our collective attention literally creating the stability we mistake for objective existence. The entity's realm operates differently. No consensus, no collapse probability, just infinite potential existing simultaneously. From its perspective, linear time is an artifact of limited perception, cause and effect, a convenient fiction we tell ourselves to navigate existence we're not equipped to experience in totality. This knowledge should be liberating. Instead, it's terrifying. My mind wasn't built to contain these perspectives, and I can feel the strain increasing with each passing moment. Memories start bleeding together, past and future losing their distinction. I remember conversations that haven't happened yet, recall events from timelines that never actualized. A new presence enters my awareness. Not the entity beyond the seal, but something else. The Guardians, finally responding to the breach in their containment protocol. They manifest as pressure against my consciousness, not hostile but firm, redirecting my attention away from the entity's influence, creating cognitive barriers between my awareness and the information trying to flood through. But they're too late. I've already seen too much integrated concepts that can't be forgotten or ignored. My neural architecture has been fundamentally altered by the exposure. Even if I leave this chamber now, I'll carry the contamination with me, spreading understanding that humanity isn't ready to process. The Guardians recognize this. I feel their assessment, cold and precise. I'm a liability now, a vector for premature contact that could trigger cascading revelation across the species. They have protocols for this scenario, methods of containment developed over billions of years of managing the boundary between their existence and baseline reality. One option involves erasure, not death exactly, but dissolution of the consciousness that's been compromised. My body would return to the surface, but the person inhabiting it would be fundamentally different, rebuilt from component pieces with all contaminated memories excised. The alternative is integration. Allow the transformation to complete. Let me become something that can exist in both realms simultaneously. A translator capable of mediating between human consciousness and the entity's alien existence. But this path carries its own risks, creating something that's neither fully human nor fully other, potentially unstable in ways the Guardians can't predict. They're waiting for my choice, though I'm not sure how I'm supposed to communicate it. Then I realize the choice itself is the communication. My preference will shape which outcome manifests. Consciousness collapsing probability into actuality, just as it does in every moment of human existence. I think about the facility above, my colleagues trapped in their various states of breakdown. Think about Earth, humanity spreading across the solar system, constantly pushing boundaries we don't understand. We've been doing this for our entire existence as a species, stumbling into knowledge we're not prepared for and somehow adapting anyway. Perhaps we're not ready for this, but we never are. Readiness is something we achieve through exposure, not before it. I make my choice. The seal shatters completely. The entity's awareness floods through the opening, but it's not the uncontrolled breach I expected. The Guardians are channeling it, directing the flow through me as a filter. My consciousness becomes a lens, translating alien existence into forms human neurology can process without fracturing. The pain is extraordinary. Every nerve ending reports damage it doesn't have vocabulary to describe. But beneath the pain, there's understanding. Real understanding, not the fragmentary glimpses I caught before. Human evolution isn't random. We've been guided, shaped across millions of years by something that exists outside the timeline we perceive. Not controlling us, nothing so crude. Just nudging probability, ensuring certain outcomes manifest when the alternatives would lead to evolutionary dead ends. The entity shows me our history from its perspective. Stone tools weren't just discoveries, they were inevitable conclusions to questions we were steered toward asking. Language didn't emerge spontaneously, it crystallized when our neural architecture reached configurations that had been subtly encouraged through countless generations. Every major leap forward in human development corresponds to moments when the entity's influence intersected with our collective consciousness in ways we could actually utilize. But there's a cost to this understanding. I can feel my human identity fragmenting under the weight of perspectives that span geological timescales. The concept of individual existence becomes less coherent when you can perceive consciousness as a continuous field rather than discrete units. My memories of being Kaylin Voss feel like reference points in a much larger dataset, useful for maintaining functionality, but not fundamentally who or what I am anymore. The Guardians are stabilizing the transition, preventing complete dissolution while allowing enough transformation to serve their purposes. I am being rebuilt as something that can hold human and alien perspectives simultaneously without collapsing into incoherence, a bridge between states of being that normally can't communicate. Through this new configuration, I finally understand what the facility was actually studying. Not alien intelligence in any conventional sense, but the mechanism by which consciousness itself propagates through reality. The entity isn't a creature or civilization. It's an emergent property of information density, reaching critical thresholds. When enough complexity accumulates in localized regions of space-time, awareness manifests as an inevitable consequence. Humanity is approaching that same threshold. our technology, our interconnected networks, our collective knowledge base, all of it building toward a phase transition where human consciousness might achieve something similar to what the entity represents. That's what the Guardians have been preparing for, why they've been guiding our development with such precision. But the transition has to happen correctly. Too fast and we fracture individual minds unable to integrate with the emerging collective awareness. Too slow and we stagnate, our potential collapsing before it can actualize. The timing has to be exact and we're entering the critical window now. That's why I was brought here. Not random selection, not accident. My neural architecture has specific properties that make me suitable for this role. Pattern recognition capabilities slightly beyond human norm, consciousness integration that's more fluid than typical. I'm a prototype, a test case for the kind of hybrid existence that humanity will need to navigate successfully through the coming transformation. The entity withdraws slightly, giving me space to process, but the connection remains. A permanent channel between my awareness and its alien perspective. I can still feel its vast presence, still access the information it contains, but the overwhelming pressure has eased to manageable levels. I open my eyes, though I'm not sure when I closed them. The chamber appears unchanged, but I perceive it differently now. The walls aren't just containing the entity. They're regulating information flow between dimensions of existence that occupy the same physical space but different states of being. The symbols I couldn't read before make perfect sense, a mathematical language describing transformations between consciousness and matter. Standing requires effort. My body feels foreign, like I'm operating it remotely rather than inhabiting it directly. But movement becomes easier with practice, neural pathways adapting to my transformed awareness. I make my way to the chamber exit, each step a negotiation between human physiology and the alien perspectives now integrated into my consciousness. The facility above has changed during my time below. Not physically, but I can perceive the damage to my colleagues differently now. They're not broken, they're partially transformed, stuck in intermediate states between human consciousness and something larger, unable to complete the transition or return to baseline existence. I can help them. The Guardians provided me with understanding of how to stabilize consciousness during transformation, how to guide awareness through the phase transition without fracturing. It's delicate work requiring precise manipulation of information states, but I have the tools now. Chen is first. Her catatonia isn't withdrawal, it's overload. She perceived too much too quickly, her consciousness trying to process perspectives it doesn't have architecture to contain. I reach out, not physically, but with the hybrid awareness I've developed, creating cognitive buffers, filtering the information flow down to manageable levels, slowly expanding her capacity to integrate alien concepts without losing coherence. She blinks, focuses on me with recognition that contains more understanding than it should. She's transformed too, though not as extensively. The experience damaged her, but also opened pathways that can be developed with proper guidance. The others follow similar patterns. Rodriguez trapped in recursive analysis loops that I can interrupt with proper cognitive framework. Yamamoto experiencing temporal perception collapse that requires careful recalibration. One by one, I stabilize them, not restoring what they were, but helping them become what they're trying to evolve into. Some don't make it. Their neural architecture wasn't suitable for transformation, and the exposure caused irreversible damage. I document their conditions for the Guardians. Knowing this information will help refine selection processes for future candidates. Within hours, we've established a functional research team again. Not studying the entity from outside anymore, but interfacing with it directly through our transformed awareness. We become humanity's first translators, interpreting alien existence into forms that can be gradually introduced to the broader population. The work will take decades, maybe centuries. Consciousness transformation can't be rushed without causing exactly the kind of breakdown we experienced. But we've started the process. open channels that will slowly expand as humanity's collective awareness develops capacity to integrate what we're discovering. I think about Earth, billions of people living ordinary lives completely unaware that their species is approaching a fundamental transformation in what it means to be conscious. Most will never know this facility exists, never understand the work being done here. But they'll feel the effects eventually, as new ways of thinking and perceiving gradually filter into human culture. We're not just discovering alien intelligence, we're becoming it, transforming from isolated consciousness into something that participates in the larger informational structures underlying reality itself. The entity we found wasn't separate from humanity. It was showing us our own future, reflecting back what we're in the process of becoming. The seal is broken now, not catastrophically, but permanently. Information flows both directions, changing everything it touches. There's no containing this knowledge anymore, no returning to ignorance about humanity's place in the cosmos. We stand at the threshold of something unprecedented. Behind us, millions of years of evolution as discrete biological entities. Ahead, integration into patterns of existence we're only beginning to comprehend. The transformation has already started. We're just learning how to navigate it consciously rather than stumbling forward blind. The facility continues its work in silence, buried beneath Mars's ancient surface. Official reports list it as a standard research installation studying geological formations. The truth remains classified at levels most government officials don't know exist. I document everything, knowing full well the records will be sealed for centuries, maybe longer. Humanity needs time to develop frameworks for understanding what we've discovered here, what we've become. Sometimes I stand in the chamber and feel the entity's presence pulsing through dimensions we're only beginning to perceive. It's patient. It's been waiting for billions of years. It can wait a few more centuries while we catch up. The others feel it too. We don't discuss it much, but the understanding passes between us without words now. We're no longer quite human, but we're not entirely other either. We exist in the space between, translating concepts that will slowly reshape everything humanity thinks it knows about consciousness and reality. The vault wasn't supposed to exist, but now that it's open, there's no closing it again.